Now, we've dressed her. We're just going to really quickly go over a couple of different other types of dresses. And the first one I'm going to do, this blue one here, is what's called a sack back. And in the back of her, she's got this flowing fabric that goes, and it's really hard to tell on the monitor, but it's basically just a fabric that just flows from the back. And she would have side panniers to give her big hips, and then the flowing fabric. This was just something to prove wealth and to show status, and it was a fashionable thing, very common in the French courts. I don't even know how much. And this has hand painted little buttons that go up and down, and it'll hook down the sides. And this center part would be called the stomacher. That's what this is. Now, a lot of people will ask, why was everything pinned or tied? Because like these buttons here, purely decorative. Buttons were mostly reserved for men. And the reason things were mostly pinned or tied is because we're women and we're fluid. We have babies, there's childbirth, there's weight gain, there's weight loss. Your clothing was extremely expensive. It was all hand done. If you're gained a little or lost a little, if you're pinned or tied it, you can still wear that particular gown. And that was the main reason. This particular, and that's made out of a Williamsburg cotton. This is a taffeta silk. And so the reason I brought this would be just a upper class day gown. This is not a court gown. And this is what's called a polonaise gown. And I don't know if you can see it, but basically the hem of the top gown has a ribbon and a button at the waist. And so the ribbon holds this hem up and it puffs up. It gives you the real good full booty look, and so that's called a polonaise. And so you walk around and you've got a really fluffy layered bum, and it's really kind of fun in the taffeta, because taffeta is great because of swish swish. Now if you weren't, and this it has lots of trim and hand knotting. Knotting is done with a little shuttle. And this also is done with hand-done fly fringe. And fly fringe is again a real common way to decorate a gown. You had lace, which was the most expensive. Fly fringe and knotting a lady could do at home. Very often she would have a little in her pocket, a little knotting shuttle that she would bring, because if you're going to sit there, Jane and I are going to go somewhere and chat and talk, we're gossiping. But if she brings her knitting and I bring my knotting shuttle and we're sitting and talking, we're just talking. We can say the same thing, you know, did you hear about Ben Franklin and his air baths? You know, but that's not gossip. As long as we're moving our hands and doing work with our hands, then we're not gossiping, which is kind of funny. So this is a little more formal of a gown. And then if you were a very common person, couldn't afford your basic silks or your fancier cottons, you would wear a simple linen gown. And this is a simple linen gown that can be just worn straight across, this can be polonaised up, and it's just the petticoat and the gown match. It would be pinned in front, very simple. It has little tambour embroidery on the flounces, which you know, in those days you could take them off or put them on. I sew my flounces in because I don't live in the 18th century and I don't want to pin them in or base them in. I just put a different one. But in those days, very often they were removable. So you have, these are the basic colonial clothing items that we have, and then we top everything off with a cap. You're always wearing a basic little cap, and then very often the little straw bergère, like the little straw cap that you would put on to keep your face free from the sun when you're out and about. But inside, the ladies took those off, and they're put on with little hairpins. This is the common way to stay warm, is a wool cloak. And that's the most common way to stay warm. And it really, really does keep you very warm. You could also have a Sontag, which would be, this is just hand woven. And so it's like a little shawl that I could either pin at the sides or tie it around. And this is one of my favorite things when it's just chilly, because it doesn't get in the way of my arms. But if I want to keep my arms, then I have knitted mitts. And that'll help keep my arms warm. If it's really, really cold, then I would put mittens to cover my fingers on top of the knitted mitts. And so I stay nice and warm that way. And it's just all about layering.
This is my twin.
Yeah. There. And then, oh yeah, and Jane is wearing a wool, come up here, she's wearing a wool gown.
They've seen mine before.
And it's a beautiful wool gown, and that was the example, because I haven't made a wool gown yet. I've ordered wool and I want to, but Jane has. So it's a simple sort of, the exact same sort of thing, and she's hand sewn all this. I machine sew most of my stuff. But the idea is the wool in the winter, and they could wear wool winter or summer because they were light wools, and you'd be shocked. A wool is really not, now we think of it very much as a winter fabric. A nice light wool is really not that hot. Linen is your coolest, but your wool, a light wool, will be cooler than your silk. Mm-hmm. Your silk will get much stuffier.
And then there's this
because it's breathable. And now,
yes.
Yeah.
I heard when I saw one of these presentations before that the expression pin money.
Yeah.
Can you tell everybody about that?
Oh, it comes from during the Revolution, because the pins were imported from England. There's the famous saying where Abigail Adams is trying to get John to bring her 600 pins, because if anybody is sewn, you bend your pins, you lose your pins, you drop your pins. If your clothing is held together with pins, yeah. They get damaged, lost, and otherwise disappear. And so they desperately needed pins, and the ladies would save, because during the Revolution, it was an imported thing, and they were very difficult to get. Hand-done pins were expensive because you're making one at a time. And so they would save up little bits of money, pin money, so they could afford those pins. And then what we have here on Molly is a wool riding habit. And so she wouldn't necessarily wear this riding her horse, though she could. Martha Washington was known as a very good horsewoman. But this you could use when you're out visiting people, as well as traveling and things like that. So this was a common. And this, the layers, you had your petticoat, you had a waistcoat, which is like your little vest, and then you would have a riding habit shirt, and then little accoutrements, you could have lace or whatnot. But it was important, they layered up, and it's all lined in linen. It was the fashion in those days, was the riding habits were to have kind of a military look.